All right, Derek Brandale says we are good to go. He's alongside David Sis Boom Ba upstairs, pushing all the right buttons. I'm Nick Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Sammy McKee. It's the Real Kipper and Bourne Show. Leaf edition. A very interesting Leaf edition to our show. So wherever you are watching, listening, Sportsnet 590, Sportsnet 360, Sportsnet Plus from 4 to 6. Glad you're aboard. If you can't catch us live, download us wherever you get your pod. A good day today for us anyways. We got together, the three of us, along with Kevin Bieksa. Fun day today.
Fun day.
That was awesome.
Where we also learned of the news of Sheldon Keefe.
Yes.
I think it was the first hole.
It was at the wrong time in the day for a bunch of Leaf guys.
I had got a call saying that he was no longer the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And then you parred six straight holes.
Then you guys asked me if I was tweeting it. I'm like, no, let Elliot do that.
Yeah.
Somebody else do that. I'm focusing on trying to go -1 in the front nine at your golf course. But thanks for having us today.
Yes,
it's a pleasure.
thanks for coming.
Right?
It was awesome having
Best
you guys
part
there.
of the day, beating Sammy and Kevin Bieksa
Team Kipper and Bourne.
on our match play,
Yeah.
where Kevin bought lunch.
Yeah, because of me. I missed that. That birdie putt on 11 from 2 feet will haunt me.
Sammy
till the
almost
day I die.
had a hole-in-one, had a 2-footer that we made him putt.
And as you can see, these guys, if you're watching on Sportsnet, you can see that these guys had a chance to have lunch and have a shower. I came straight here.
Do the
I
labor.
got the golf. It's very appropriate that on a day the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs gets fired because of a bad playoff outing and golf involved, that I'm wearing a golf outfit. It works out well.
It's
And I can hear everybody right now going,
I don't care.
On this day, you guys start us off with your stupid match today, and you're not discussing Sheldon Keefe, no longer the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, relieved of his role as head coach, as announced by Brad Treliving through the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, all right, just open it up, JB. I mean, no real surprise, but I'll let you say that.
Yeah, you know, we've been saying that this is kind of one of the few buttons they had to push. Couldn't be the same. Didn't seem like Shanahan was going somewhere. You know, making a trade of a big player, which we'll get to, is complicated. This just felt like he had enough tries, you know, where you basically said someone else has to have a turn at this. You guys know I think he's a good coach and did a good job here. I think he can be proud of his time with the Leafs. I think his .665 winning percentage is the best among regular season coaches with a minimum of 300 games. But alas, he did not get over the hump, and he said so himself today. He accepts and understands why it happened.
I do, look at his time here. And like you said, the 665 point percentage and minimum 300 games, the worst playoff series record, minimum 5 series. Frank Patrick never won 1 in 7 tries. Bob Barry went 1 in 7. Sheldon Keefe went 1 in 5. The amount of stuff that didn't go their way in one, we have a chance, they hired him after Babs got fired, and he was looked upon as a sort of, fresher mind and all this.
The next one.
Yeah, a couple bounces go different ways here for him. And listen, he had his mistakes. He's made them like any coach does.
Yeah.
But the game 7s, the game 5 in the bubble, all these little things that just didn't break their way completely changed the narrative on what it could have been with Sheldon Keefe here. And I think it's the right choice. I think it was time to go. But I don't, could have been a lot better for Sheldon.
Yeah.
It just these one game.
I said as much the other day. A little unlucky.
Listen,
But
I think the best coaching I saw out of Sheldon Keefe for probably the last month, 6 weeks, where he looked for the first time as a really solid NHL, how to get your team ready for the playoffs, what should they look like, all of that came at the very end. And yes, they were 1 goal shy of advancing to the second round, but too late.
Yeah.
Too late. The stubbornness, the being reluctant to change your lines and give a different look from Austin to Mitch to Tavares to Nylander.
It's just something that we haven't really looked at much.
Why did it take you so long?
Yeah.
Right. The announcement that we're going to try Nylander at center at training camp, and it never got a sniff. Never. Like, just too late for the guy.
You know, you hear people saying it's more commonly accepted that a coach in his second stop tends to have his most success. That tends to be why. And the reason is you learn a lot of lessons your first time around. And I think if Sheldon looked at the early part of his tenure here where it was, we're going to be puck possession, we're not going to be this Babs, go forward, dump it in, we're going to hang on, we're going to make plays. Eventually, they got back to Babs' way, right? They got back to this possession thing is killing us in playoffs and we're in our own zone. And it felt like some wasted.
Less gambling, less cheating, no Willie and maybe others floating around the far blue line for that stretch pass that I've hated for 3 years, 4 years. That kind of got cleaned up at the end, but just not enough time for Sheldon.
No, not enough time and not the wrong decision necessarily. So, you know, I guess I don't hear anyone saying this is stupid, they shouldn't have done it. It's a lot of what now, right? Because they did get rid of a coach who had success here, was familiar with the program, and they had some stability.
The rating was on the wall, and if I'm not mistaken, he didn't have to speak earlier in the week, but chose to.
Yep.
So that was a sign that he wasn't going to make it to Friday.
He had some idea. And then today, he took to social media and had the chance to make a statement. And I think instead of going on a bunch of shows, he just decided to just say what he had to say.
I mean, I was kind of surprised to see it because we did hear from him.
He probably did it
earlier in the
days
week.
ago. He probably knew he was, he's like, I'll put this in the can for when I need it.
I found it a little sappy, but
Do you want to play it? We have it.
Sure.
We actually have
All
a
right.
video of
Go
it. If
ahead.
you want to play it, we can play it. Yeah.
the whole
Leafs
thing.
Nation,
Yeah. Oh.
time has come to say goodbye.
Oh, maybe we don't.
Writing down a note and sending it out didn't seem like enough, and I
Oh. Did we stop it? Here we go.
There he
Oh,
is.
here we go.
There he is.
Are we
No.
playing it? Just his face.
Is he in the Bahamas? Where is he right now?
No, we just have his
He could be
face.
anywhere on the globe, essentially, but a desert.
we think like, you know, we're thinking Lake Ontario, a cottage,
He might be
a lake.
in Cabo. I don't know.
Might be in
That's-
Cabo, but for those of you that cannot see
Well,
our video or our show on Sportsnet,
That-
he taped this in front of a lake or a body
It's
of
a nice
water,
setting,
and it's a
chirping
beautiful
birds.
setting.
You know what?
Okay.
Part of it is like he's in his own heaven. There's like this
Yes.
relief where
Right?
Are we going to do
I
it?
don't know. Are we doing this or can anybody up there talk to me? All right, let's
Okay,
play it.
let's
Let's
do
play
it.
it.
All
Let's
right.
play it. Oh. Can't hear it.
writing down a note and sending it out didn't seem like enough, and I do plan on taking a little break from media, so here I am. I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a dream come true for a boy from Brampton. I want to thank Kyle Dubas, Lou Lamoriello, Brad Treliving, Brandon Pridham, Brendan Shanahan, Larry Tannenbaum, and the MLSE board for giving me this opportunity to work with the Marlies and Leafs. I didn't get it done in the playoffs. I didn't help push our team over the line and deliver. I accept responsibility for that. No excuses. That's the job. I didn't get it done. It's the reality of the business, and I accept it. To the players, I appreciate all your efforts. Your talents and your work ethic made me look good on a lot of nights. Anyone who suited up for blue and white, I appreciate you. To the support staff of the Maple Leafs, you're tremendous people and you're elite at what you do. Players and support staff will drive the team to success. I believe it will win. Leafs Nation, you deserve your Stanley Cup. Your passion at home and on the road is unmatched. It's an incredible honor to coach the Maple Leafs, to try to deliver for you. To the media, that had to deal with you every single day, sometimes twice a day, 3 times a day. I appreciate your process. I respected the fact that you're honest and fair and had a job to do. I hope you appreciated the fact that I helped you do it. I don't know what comes next, but I know I'll be ready for it. In the meantime, I'll enjoy giving my family the time that they deserve. Love you all, and be well.
And thank you to the Real Kyper and Bourne Show, who came up with some wonderful ideas, which
No.
I never used any of them.
Not to make light of this, because man lost his job, but I can't help but think of Anchorman. When he's like, I've got some urgent and breaking news. Cannonball. That's all I could think of.
He has. We're laughing. He's got a 2-year contract extension at some
It
millions
actually
of
looked
dollars
like he
per
was
year.
sitting on like a skidoo, and he might just rip off.
He's sitting probably on $4 million US the next 2 years.
Like
I'd have that smile on my face too, in front
I'm
of
happy for him.
in front of a beautiful lake or
There
ocean.
has to be some relief. Like, I did a good job over my years there. Didn't get it done. I can hold my head up high.
Yeah, but he said that on what? Monday?
Yeah.
He said it already.
Yeah.
But that's fine. He didn't hurt himself.
No.
And let's be honest. That's not for media or the fans. That's for the next team.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you go about it. I think that is as classy as it gets. Blames himself, thanks everybody, puts it out, smiling right in front of a lake.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, he's a great guy.
You're right. Like, he got flooded with calls today. I'm not going to take every individual call. Put this thing out there. Put it to
here's what
bed.
I gotta say.
Nobody's going to be asking for anything else anytime soon now. And just hang out.
Yeah. It really, there is something freeing about that video. So good on him. He's he can he'll probably have some other opportunities, I would imagine, very soon. So
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you talk about how he did a good job and like they had a great winning percentage, but he will be a big part of the legacy of this group and people will look back on it and like, you talk about the regular season record, but a lot of his teams here, they didn't really get it done. And I think he knows that. And I think that's part in the $3 million or $4 million USD helps that or whatever, but that will be part of his legacy here. There's no question. You can't get by it.
It just seemed like he never got it right with this group. And just in terms of when to push them hard or when to back off, it was always questioned, right? And then there was that very famous backpedaling on soft. What was the magic word?
He called him soft and purposeless.
Just how we played soft.
There you go.
Right?
But this is all, this market, it's going to do this to whoever's the coach, but I do think the first time you're a head coach to be handed the Toronto Maple Leafs and these tools, that's a handful. Like, that's a learning experience in itself. And I imagine you have some confidence after that. But
yeah, him going somewhere else now. Like, I don't know who I saw, but the Devils may be interested. Like, going to somewhere else after being the Leafs head coach is like, oh God, this is a lot
I
less
bet you he
stress.
doesn't go somewhere else.
You don't think?
I bet you he doesn't coach. Take a year. His boys are like, I think, their teams are in Toronto.
Let me tell you something. If there's an opportunity there and
you don't make any more money to go do it. I guess it's just that there aren't many
Well, you're going to cover your $2 million.
Yeah.
The question is, do you want to sit home on the couch making $2 million, or do you want to go work on an NHL bench making $2 million? Yeah, I'm asking the wrong
you want my
guys.
answer?
Yeah.
Couch.
I'm finding you on the first tee.
Yeah. No, I get it. There's not many jobs.
Yeah. So
you'd have the chance to win in Jersey.
when the Leafs scheduled their press conference, their managerial press conference, it was for Thursday, and then they pushed it back to Friday, and now we know why. Right?
But it is a little like, had they planned then to fire Sheldon on Thursday? And if so, why? Why was it not done Tuesday
Because
or Wednesday?
they were making phone calls all week.
I'll ask you, Nick Kypreos, have they made phone calls to anyone in particular that you're aware of? Oh.
Yeah. Craig Berube.
He has taken a call.
Todd McClellan.
Okay.
There's been calls in for Joel Quenneville, inquiries and calls in to find out his situation.
Yeah.
And this is part of what makes Brad Treliving. He's making calls. What's out there?
Yeah.
What's available? What isn't available? Let me know. That's what's been going on all week.
It does feel like the Leafs have the money and Berube's the big name. And he's
What do you
gonna
think
end up
about Joel
here.
Quenneville? Let me ask you, JB.
Well, that's it's a loaded question because
For sure it is.
I just don't know I still don't feel like I know what happened in Chicago. And so I think he's the best available coach, and I think he would do a really good job with this group. I'd like to see him as the coach. I don't know.
It's the baggage.
It's a lot of baggage, and it's a distraction on top of, if you have moral issues, does that affect a certain portion of the fan base? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it.
It's a big statement, and I think if you are hiring Joel Quenneville, that is a change in philosophy for the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of
not willing to have Corey Perry.
I've often joked that the Leafs they want to win the PR Cup as opposed to the Stanley Cup. They really care about the public perception, and they're very involved in the community and all the different people that they've hired and all this stuff. If you do that, you are prioritizing the on the ice we're winning product over your public relation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's the right choice. If Joel Quenneville is the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, probably going to be pretty excited as, he's a Stanley Cup winner and all. He's been out of the game a while, but it's a complicated one for me. I really don't know how to feel about it yet. That one takes some thinking for me.
Yeah, I don't know where in terms of public perception would be
hard hire for a new GM and Brendan to make, don't you think? Given their statuses, Brendan feels like he's on thin ice. I think he might say the same about his own position. And Tree's pretty new. That feels like a hard hire to make. Do you think it's likely? It's a serious...
No. So it's of course, if there wasn't the baggage, he's one of the most successful coaches in history.
Yeah.
It would be Babcock-like,
Mm-hmm.
whereas, we've got some things underneath it. Remember the story about Guy Boucher almost being named head coach, being in the same building, but we're going to go get the big whale.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go get and Joel would be the big whale here without the baggage, but they're tied forever.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether or not the media or the fan perception will be not comparing situations, of course, to Corey Perry, but not a lot of people ended up still trying to figure out what happened to him in Chicago. It's over and everybody's moving on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that can happen here or not. I have no idea. I grew up in this town. I've watched it for my whole life. I can't even answer.
Yeah.
I can't even come close to
he
answering
would have
yes
to
or no
answer
on that.
A lot of questions.
How long has he been out now?
3 years.
3 years, right? Because that was during the first year we did this show that was all coming out. So 3 years. I don't know. How long is long enough? Maybe never coming back would not be long enough for people. I don't know.
Definitely that's the answer. And some people.
How
about new?
that? But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a complicated one. But do you think so? Who are they calling on that, Kyper? They calling the league about it? They calling him about it?
Gary.
Do you think he would want to do it?
Listen, he went on Strick's podcast 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
maybe
a month ago, whatever it is. You're going there so you can start to rehabilitate your image or what people perceive of you. You're not going up there just to do Andy a favor. You're trying to find a way to get your name and your reputation back in some way, whatever that means, and to coach again in the National Hockey League.
And I think he will coach again. I don't think it'll be here. I think tomorrow morning at the press conference, they're going to tell us that Craig Berube's been named the coach.
You do?
I'm not sure if that's going to happen that quickly.
I think.
I don't know. You could be right. We're spitballing here.
Yeah,
I don't get a sense that it's going to be that quick here.
What about the assistant coaches? They still have their
I don't know if they were ever mentioned today.
No, they weren't.
But you want one of the coaches that went 0 for a gazillion on the power play? 1 for a gazillion on the power play?
Yeah. No, not really.
It makes no sense to get rid of Sheldon and then bring anyone back from that.
The PK had been good in years past, but wasn't this year.
Yeah.
Mike Van Ryn, he's an interesting one because he worked with Berube.
Yes.
In St.
There
Louis.
might be a chance that if you hire Craig Berube, he says, I want him. I've worked with him before, and I want him to stay. I'm sure that's a conversation that could happen, or the Leafs say, no, we want fresh people here, new ideas.
Yeah. It's tough to know, right? You don't follow the St. Louis Blues close enough to know if Berube is some sort of master tactician.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what they need?
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, though, but is he the whale right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Because I keep hearing Todd McClellan is of great interest to the Leafs as well. They're making calls on him in terms of more research on him. People speak very highly of Todd.
Yeah. Luke Fox had an article today, and in the article, he talked about how Sheldon Keefe got all these things right. But one thing, and the players said all the right things in their exit interviews about Sheldon, but no one ever said, like, I would run through a wall for that guy. Like, that guy inspires me to go, I would just, whatever it takes. Well, Berube, I don't think gets all the little things right necessarily, but I think he does inspire guys.
So we had a great conversation with Kevin Bieksa, and we just weighed out the pros and cons of X's and O's compared to a guy that can just make you feel like you just described.
Yeah.
Well, you watched, they had those clips of the Sheldon pregame stuff where he was talking about like getting the team ready and him going into Game 7 overtime. He was like, let's have fun with it. And I was just like, okay. And then that's side by side with the clip of Berube before Game 7 against the Bruins when he was coaching the Blues. We're a good hockey team and we're going to win the beat. Like, he's just like, it's just a different thing completely.
Yeah.
And, I think after all those years of Keefe, wouldn't a little bit of a curveball changeup probably be the direction you'd want to go?
In the short term, sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So that conversation you're talking about, did Kevin give you a conclusion, his opinion on what?
Yeah. Find a guy that can push the right buttons.
In terms of
motivation and inspire.
The NHL is a copycat league. And you look at the systems the Leafs play. They're one of, half the league probably uses a 1-2-2 in the neutral zone. There's not many ways to forecheck. You can send an extra guy if you want, but everyone's kind of doing similar things. Special teams, to me, is actually embarrassing for the league that teams don't get more creative than they do. But the point I'm making is that it does feel like motivation matters when everyone does some version of the same thing. I don't think anyone's coming in with, what is it in total football? Is it the Netherlands? No one's coming in here and playing positionless hockey in the NHL anytime soon.
Like Sheldon tried that at the start, kind of.
Well, everyone has this fantasy that it was heading there, and it never. You get to playoffs, and
that
the curve
work.
of the game didn't curve; it just stayed straight.
In about 12, 15 minutes, we're going to welcome in Frank Seravelli from Daily Face-Off, and we'll get maybe some more names out of him. We'll get the latest on what he's hearing, but in the meantime, we have to have a conversation on tomorrow and what we expect out of tomorrow between MLSE CEO Keith Belly, President Brendan Shanahan, and General Manager Brad Treliving. So, floor is yours, JB. What do we expect?
I expect a lot of saying the right thing. The results haven't been there. We understand that. Things have to be different. We can't just run it back. The only thing I'm really going to be paying attention to here, well, obviously any coaching announcement, but in the past, they've made strong commitments to the core four, and we believe that we're close.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see if the tone struck is different. In the past, I didn't disagree with running it back. I'm different than a lot of people. I did disagree with, not making those guys wonder or worry for a sec, immediately being like, you guys are fine.
Yeah.
Don't have a moment where you feel like you're twisting in the wind. It's okay to make people a little nervous sometimes. And in the past, they've been very reticent to do that.
I wrote an article today for my weekly article on the Toronto Star, and I basically said the opposite, that you got to make hard decisions now.
Yeah.
That would include the easiest way to alleviate the salary cap, and I pointed the direction of the contracts with Mitch Marner and John Tavares, one more each for them going into UFA, and the focus has to be as early as this summer on better balance in your lineup, better balance on the salary cap, which includes focus on the blue line and goaltending.
How soon could something like that take place? You can make trades now.
You can make trades as long as they don't include anybody that's currently playing.
Rarely happens, though. During the playoff. I can't think of it ever happening.
No, it has happened.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're not
Maybe
big
not big
trades,
names, yeah.
but there are some minor league trades that have gone on the last few years between non-competing clubs.
I'm sure Gary would love it if the Leafs traded Mitch Marner during the Florida-Dallas final.
At least
And
someone
no
would be
one's
interesting.
talking about the game.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. It's interesting that you include Tavares in that you think that both guys could get approached. Now, it is contingent on both players at least being willing to consider other opportunities. You think Mitch would?
Yeah, I do. Because we can certainly sit here and discuss and debate whether or not, he's just had his fill of being the whipping boy and I'm sure he feels like he's happy to share the blame, but somehow I get the brunt of it a lot more than the Marner or the Matthews and the Rileys and the Tavareses and the Nylanders. And he could be very well tired of it at this point in his career and look for a change in itself on that. But the driving force for me, which I mentioned in my article today, was that, this guy's still in his prime. Mm-hmm. He's going to max out a 7 or 8 year deal. And he will continue to be amongst the highest paid players in the game, which could mean on an 8-year deal, upwards of $100 million. That trumps staying and playing for your local team.
Mm-hmm. Particularly if you play income, no tax, you're in Nashville or you're in Carolina or you're in, Florida, whatever
or Vegas.
Places, or Vegas.
Utah,
what's the tax situation in Utah?
I think it's a lower tax rate. But anyway, I don't know exactly. But yeah, I could see that incentivizing him a little bit to make that decision. And then it comes down to what sort of value a guy like Mitch Marner has, because obviously he's a 100-point guy. He's young. I've just been informed Utah has a 4.85% tax rate. Does that help anyone?
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
So it's not a no state tax.
It's low.
It's low.
And what do we have here? 100% tax?
1/3.
If you were going to trade Mitch Marner, and I asked this question to both of you guys, that's a massive trade for the franchise in terms of nailing it, getting everything right. Like, what are you looking in for in return?
Tyson Barrie, ideally.
Oh my God!
Exactly.
No, but honestly,
that's a good lesson learned, is it not?
That is a lesson.
Are you prioritizing trying to find defense? Are you looking to restock the cupboards with picks?
As long as you have salary cap freedom, then you can either find a blue chip player now, or you could just take assets in itself. Like
if you gave
2
him
first
away,
rounders, a prospect, instead of like your stud 26-year-old D, you can get him on the UFA now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter, Sammy, as long as you have.
Oh, I think it matters.
No, what matters is that you bring back valuable assets that you can even flip at the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. There's no need to say, I have to get a number 1D for Mitch Marner now. As long as you move his 10.9 out, I can go get him in UFA.
Yeah, I can go get Pesci or Montour.
We were talking about forwards we want before the show out there, and I was like, and this has nothing to do with this is what they should do for Marner, but Jordan Martinook is a free agent in Carolina. Love him. And you like Chandler Stevenson.
Love Chandler Stevenson.
You know, there's guys out there on UFA. So I'm just saying cap space has value too.
Go ahead.
It is a terrifying trade to make because there's been tons of times over this last 7 years, and I get the perception around Marner, and I'm part of it. He's not my favorite guy either, and I'm part of the negative side of it, getting down on him in the playoffs. I am. And Kyper, I know it pisses you off, but
no, it doesn't piss me off. But I also listen to you. No. Listen, Sammy, you're no different than everybody else out there. You're with Marner, win or tie, right? Win or tie. We've had conversations where we've said we've all opened the show and Mitch Marner's validated now, right?
Well, that's
validated.
That's what I'm worried about.
He's 10.9. He deserves all of it. He's playing amazing and blah, 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 blah. And then, not my favorite now today.
But I just think it's a terrifying trade because of how many times we've sat here and talked about how, there's been times where he's been the least best player. When the offensive production out of him, he's a winger.
It's a dangerous trade.
But
It's
the
a
reason everyone's
dangerous
trade is like
man.
the odds of him winning the Conn Smythe Trophy one day aren't nil.
No,
it's
that's
not
what I mean.
zero.
I'll tell you why it's a very dangerous trade is because we've seen him at his best, providing that 100-point guy, killing penalties.
Never actually got to 100 points.
Making, stop it.
It's true.
Making plays that no one else can make, right? And then you're like, wow. Yeah. And now you want to take it out of your lineup and replace it with what?
That's the thing. To me, where you make a trade, you want to bring something back that is going to give you a bit of offense at least.
Yeah. The Marner haters listening to that are saying, replace what? The postseason, you're not replacing the same thing.
Still got to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still got to get there.
Still got to get there.
Okay. We're going to take a break. And I don't know how much time we have here because we're going to welcome in Frank Seravelli and we're going to get into this with him as well. But I know we went into trading Marner, but here's a question for you going into tomorrow. Okay. Who's deciding this for you?
What do you mean?
Is it
who's in charge after tomorrow to make
Keith Pelly
trades or have the final say, or who gets to stamp it now moving forward?
I think our show as a committee should. That's what I think.
All the more reason to just say exactly what I just said about how terrifying a trade this is. Because, listen, Brad Treliving did an all right job in this offseason, brought in some guys they like. But, his trade record isn't perfect. His moves aren't perfect. He's made some good ones. I guess every GM's made some good ones and bad ones. But it's just, I'm not sure I want him to be the one pulling the trigger on a franchise-altering trade.
This is
that fair?
But he's the GM.
I know.
Listen, this really opens up a whole debate of this title that I don't know how long it's been around now, 10, 15 years, but president of hockey ops. And we've seen some of these Hall of Famers come in and get them, and it's like we're still not sure on how much power that wielded over the 10 years for Brendan. Was Brendan
I think it's
the
evolved.
guy was Brendan the guy in 10 years that someone like Kyle Dubas needed to come in at the final second, knock on the door and say, can I do this trade? Because I'm led to believe that Kyle had the power to go and do these things without Brendan. And I'm not even sure if I believe that or not.
Well,
but that's the question that kind of needs to be asked moving forward. Where does it work moving forward, Keith Pelly? Next after your press conference, is it Brendan's still the president? The buck stops with Brendan. Brendan has final say on trades. Does he not? Is this now Brad Treliving making all these decisions? Are they doing it together?
Yeah.
Is it collaborative?
For 10 years, he's been the president, and the role of president in the NHL has changed over those 10 years. They have become more hockey involved rather than business people. And right around the time it really changed, he went from Lou Lamoriello to Kyle Dubas. Lou Lamoriello wasn't asking him for anything. Lou Lamoriello doesn't operate like that. And Kyle probably had to a little bit more, which is part of the reason Kyle wanted more authority in the first place.
So
great point, and one that I'd never even thought of. But
I worked with Doug
Great
McLean for
observation.
a very long time here. So when we were at Sportsnet, he was one of the first to phrase hearing about president of hockey ops as, they made up the fake GM.
Yeah.
That's a fake GM job, which means
Which
that
is the fake one? GM or president?
GM
Is the fake job.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
That was like Joe Sakic, homered into the bushes.
Yes.
Like, that's the GM now.
Right? So it's like, okay, you got this president title, but when you know what hits the fan, like, where are we going on this?
The bullets are flying and you're holding your GM in front of you.
You know, they trade for an injured Nick Foligno. Like, Kyle Dubas? Oh, I don't know. Tyson Barrie and Kerfoot for Naz Kadri. Is that Lou? just Lou?
I don't know.
Lou and so it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And now the one thing that you can't deny is that it got ugly towards the end between Kyle Dubas and Brendan.
No, of
right?
course, yes.
And Kyle was starting to make decisions. Did he run everything by Brendan? Did he just do it on his own? Did Brendan feel like not involved enough?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the questions that need answering from Keith Pelly, I think, and I'm not sure how many.
That.
I'm not sure how many answers we'll get publicly tomorrow on it.
But give us the organizational hierarchy. Who's making the hockey decisions?
We should
Exactly.
go. We should go.
All right, plenty more to dive into, including Frank Seravelli from Daily Faceoff will join us next on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Welcome back to the Real Kyper and Bourne Show, Toronto Maple Leaf edition. In this first hour, let's welcome in Frank Seravelli, Hockey Insider, president of hockey content for Daily Faceoff, a busy guy out west covering the Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers, but lucky enough to bring him along to maybe help us figure out who the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs will be. And the answer is, Frank?
I don't know. The answer is...
Well, thanks for joining us, Frank.
Yeah, we'll see you guys. I think the true answer is Brad Treliving doesn't know. I'm sure he's got a short list of guys that he's really intrigued by. My understanding he has already begun to reach out to candidates to begin those conversations and to eventually line up interviews. I don't get the sense this is going to be something that's going to be wrapped up in the next 24 or 48 hours or anything like that. They've got time, and I think they intend to work through the process.
Earlier in the show, Frank, we discussed the name Joel Quenneville. It's my understanding that calls have been made, inquiries, maybe figuring out the status of Joel Quenneville. How realistic is it that something like that could get further evolve, or is this a simple yes or no from the league?
Right now, it's a no, unless something changes that I don't know about. His future and ability to earn a living in the NHL is completely in the hands of Commissioner Gary Bettman. I think that's maybe the toughest part about all of this for Joel Quenneville, and I'll include Stan Bowman in the same category as well. Two guys that would like to be working that haven't received a sentence, which if the answer is you can never coach or work in the National Hockey League again, I don't know that they'd be happy about that or fine with it, but it's not having any sentence at all that makes this even tougher. When will they be let back in? We're in now I believe a third hiring cycle that has precluded to this point them participating in that. And I think teams would like to know, because there would be interest in both of these men for jobs. And then to say nothing of them individually, when will we get an answer? When will we know if and when we are able to return to work?
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch. It's also fascinating to watch your new setup. It looks like you're in a rap video from the 1990s, and I really like it. I just want to let you know.
I would say the toilet stall that I'm sitting in, or feels like I'm sitting in, is decidedly less cool than a 90s rap video, but I'll go with what you got.
Yeah,
Good choice, Frank.
Fair enough. Want to get your thoughts on, the Leafs have to do big things. People are talking about the core four. Mitch Marner's name comes up as a guy who could be moved. Same with John Tavares. His name comes up as someone fans would like to see approached. What do you think the possibility of those guys getting dealt would be, and sort of what kind of market would there be were they to be available?
Well, I'll start with John Tavares because, I think probably even John Tavares would be one to tell you that his play is not entirely commensurate with the pay that he's earning and the cap hit that he's taking in. That's the way it works in the NHL sometimes, especially as you get to the latter stages of a long-term deal. That said, I think there's probably a really small likelihood that he's going to be playing in any uniform other than a Toronto Maple Leafs one, blue and white next season. And the reason for that is I don't know that you approach your captain. I don't know that you make that type of decision. And I'll actually take it a step further. Yes, John Tavares has not played at a level commensurate necessarily production wise to his pay. But I think if we want to have a larger conversation, John Tavares's play has actually been fascinating to watch him evolve from someone that arrived as this kind of power forward that's turned himself into an elite net front presence. Hey, I look at the first round series, and if we're not talking cap hits because, we only can kind of judge and view players through that prism, he did still contribute and find a way to factor into 2 game-winning goals in that 7-game series. So now let's move on to Mitch Marner and have that conversation and rip the Band-Aid off, because I think that's going to be a much more difficult conversation. Now, I've heard and seen and read there's been no shortage of ink spilled on the idea of, oh, well, he's part of the core 4. He eventually needs a new contract, but in the meantime, he has a no move clause where he holds all the cards. And I've said this before, I don't necessarily buy into that notion that because Mitch Marner has a no move clause, that there isn't a way to make a change to this Leafs core if you want to. I think the conversation could be as blunt or as nice as they want to put it, but it's really just as simple as, Mitch, we really appreciate everything that you've done here, but when your contract expires, we are not offering you a new one. We are not bringing you back on an extension. So whether you have already played your last game as a Leaf or whether you will be at some point whenever next season ends, that's going to be it for you. And if you want, you have the contractual right to head into your contract season, in parentheses, for a team that might not want you. And you can go out and try and play through that, or you could just work with us and we could rip that Band-Aid off and address that situation now. So a long-winded way of saying there is malleability to this core. It's much needed. There is also other contracts coming off the books where there's flexibility. So there's lots that the Leafs can do and Brad Treliving can do, as he's now gotten a full season of evaluation to begin to put his stamp for real on this roster.
We're talking to Frank Seravelli, Hockey Insider with Daily Faceoff. So let's dive into that a little bit more here, because there's going to be thoughts of maybe re-signing Max Domi. Do you want Bertuzzi, Joel Edmondson? There's the raise of Nylander and Matthews. There's a minimal that the cap's going up. It's not very comfortable for GMs again next year. Even if you move Marner, is that enough to go out and drop some serious coin on UFAs to get defense and goalies? If you're at that stage, Frank, where you're asking and telling Mitch Marner that it's going to end for you like very soon here, one way or another, so let's do this now. Why not do the same thing to John Tavares and get his 11 off the books, or half of it off the books?
Well, the answer why is that you're trading from an immediate disadvantage. You're dealing with a player who isn't, as I mentioned, playing at a level commensurate to his pay, but Mitch Marner, regular season wise, at least is. And I know there's a ton of teams that have already sort of whispered to me, hey, what do you know? Will this guy become available? And what do you think the Leafs would be looking for in order to make something like this happen? Because they see the 95 to 100 point seasons. They see the creativity. They see a decently complete game. And they say, what if we were able to get him outside of the fishbowl and his hometown team, where he really seems to wear a lot of it? And could we make magic happen with him? So I think there's enough teams interested in Marner that's a totally different conversation than dealing at a disadvantage from Tavares, to say nothing of the sort of culture part of when you go and begin to have that conversation with a guy that's your team captain. So is there enough flexibility? Can they do something different? How vastly different can this team look in the fall? I think the answer is pretty significantly different when you consider some of those free agents. I mean, I think there's reason to entertain conversations with Domi and Bertuzzi based on the way the second half of the season went. But I think when you really begin to diagnose and dissect what the Leafs are dealing with, guys, we all know that their defense core is, for the most part, on paper, it's not a Stanley Cup contending defense core. Yet the scariest part of their round one exit for me is that they weren't an issue at all. That wasn't the reason they lost to the Bruins. It's because of the way their cap table is structured and the guys that they're paying humongous money to aren't producing. 13 out of the last 14 playoff games, 2 goals or less. If that's the supposed strength of your team and it's what has repeatedly continued to fail you, you got to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and they, it's not just, you mentioned the other guys, Domi and Bertuzzi. I think they have like 12 UFAs or something. It's some sort of huge number. Do you think that some of the deadline things they did, like would Lyubushkin come back? Would Edmondson come back? Some of these fringe pieces, how much interest would there be in retaining them?
I think probably a pretty fair amount. I mean, you let Lyubushkin walk once and you go, I know different regime, but you go and get him again. Mm-hmm. I think there's reasons to think that, someone like him and an inexpensive depth role can help you. I just think they've got a million different ways that they can play this. And I'm sure it's some combination of, guys that you keep. And then also, certainly some new blood that's able to come in. And so, I think a lot of people, Leaf fans, just based on what I see in the reaction, they'd like to see more new blood than not. Mm-hmm. And I can understand why.
How long do the Leafs need to hire a head coach here? How quickly will this happen? Berube, McClellan, what are you hearing on them?
I don't think it's going to be crazy long. I mean, I think probably stretches some time into, next week. I think, as I mentioned, they've already begun to contact some of these people to begin lining this up. I think Craig Berube is going to be really high on their list. But by no means do I think that's a fait accompli or anything like that. And in some ways, I'm actually more intrigued by what the domino effect of this, vacancy that now exists. We've all thought that it was trending in this direction, but once the Leafs pull the trigger, the New Jersey Devils are well down the track with Craig Berube and Todd McClellan. Mm-hmm. Do they suddenly speed this up and say, we want to make sure we get the guy that we want and prefer? Or do the Leafs now, with some of the gravitational pull or, magnetic pull that comes with being in Toronto, does that muscle and might and attractiveness of that job, does that sort of change how some of these candidates might look at it? I think that's also a fair question.
We'll wait and see. The fireworks start tomorrow midday for the Toronto Maple Leafs when 3 of the bosses show up for a press conference. Hey, Frank, great stuff, man. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs, okay? And we'll have you on again soon.
Never a dull moment, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Frank.
Frank Seravelli. Another name, too. Gabby, Bruce Boudreau. Mm-hmm. I heard he hired either Elliott or Gord Stellick to either be his agent or press
Dude, if
press
they
guy.
Hired Bruce Boudreau, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. Coach Clippers would be unbelievable.
I do have a little fear of the next coach. Like, they need to be kind of good talker. What the hell are we going to do in the first segment next year if it's like Berube's short?
Buddy, we're finding Sheldon on a couch somewhere by the lake.
Maybe we can hire Sheldon as a correspondent just for old time's sake.
Quickly before I go, one of the biggest Leaf fans in the world, Justin Bieber, announced today on Instagram that him and his wife Haley are pregnant. So there you go.
A little Beeb bit.
Little Beeb. There you go.
Right. Tim Beeb.
Biggest Leaf fan in the world, Justin Bieber. Congratulations to the Biebs.
Shout out to the Biebs.
Congratulations.
Sure they're already shopping for giant jackets as we speak.
I love it.
All right.
Love it.
This roller coaster ain't stopping anytime soon on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. As we go national next, we'll welcome in Craig Simpson, Hockey Night in Canada. Stick around. There's more. All right, let's get it going. The Real Kyper and Bourne Show, National Edition. We're live on Sportsnet and Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver. Wow, Vancouver. Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour, Real Kyper and Bourne, brought to you by Bet365. In a few minutes, we're going to welcome in Craig Simpson, former NHLer, two-time Stanley Cup champion, and of course, one of the leaders at Hockey Night in Canada, breaking it all down for us during these NHL playoffs. But news of the day around the NHL, off the ice, Sheldon Keefe, head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, relieved of his duties today, JB, and a lot of people thought it was coming, but this is the Toronto Maple Leafs, where no one gets to definitively figure out what they're doing or thinking these days, and yet they waited till today to do it. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that Sheldon Keefe had a nice run in Toronto. He was a good coach. His .665 winning percentage is the highest winning percentage of any coach who's coached 300 NHL games. So he won an awful lot. I also think it's true that when you don't get over the hump, it's someone else's turn. And, Sheldon put out a video today where he expressed gratitude and how he understands it's the results-based business. And it really isn't more complicated than that. Here is how you did. Here are our expectations. It didn't meet them. Thank you for your time. So I don't think anyone's too shocked or heartbroken or think anyone's wronged here.
I tend to agree with everything you said there, and we talked about it a little bit in our first hour, but having the Toronto Maple Leafs as your first coaching job in the NHL, there's definitely a world where he goes somewhere else with a different roster of guys who maybe, have a little bit better playoff record and all this stuff, and he's away from it, much like what might happen with Mitch Marner if he goes somewhere else. And he is an excellent coach again, and maybe has even more success than he did here. I think that world's possible, but the time had come. The time had come, and I think it was the right decision.
As I mentioned at the top, we're at Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver, and I can't help but think everybody's having a really good chuckle in Vancouver, watching what's going on in Toronto. Sorry, Sammy.
Well, that's true. Laugh it up. Enjoy it.
You're taking it on the chin right now.
Hey, I'm the only one here that picked the Vancouver Canucks to win last night. So,
by the way, you also picked them to win 5-4.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Nice. I called that one.
The point I'm trying to make here is that this time last year, it was the thought that the Leafs were on the cusp of being this Stanley Cup contending team, right?
Yeah.
Favorite in the second round against the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
Vancouver sitting there, and we're listening to Alvin and Jimmy Rutherford saying, we don't think we're that far off. And we're all laughing at Vancouver going, hey, you guys stink.
Rutherford, I believe, said preseason, if things break well, if everything goes right, we're a playoff team.
And the point I'm trying to make in all of this is it's incredible 12 months later that it's the Leafs spinning their wheels, and here's Vancouver up 1-0 against a team that a lot of people also picked to win the Stanley Cup.
And we're going to get to that game, but they handled their business last night. It wasn't a fluke.
But what are we going to hear out of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Are we going to hear a Jimmy Rutherford that we make a couple of changes here?
Is Rutherford available? Can we get him?
Can the Leafs get back in the game 12 months later like the Vancouver Canucks?
Yes.
But
they can.
They didn't suck, though. They haven't sucked, Kyper. They've been a 100-point team every year. It's a different situation, I think, between Vancouver and Toronto, where Vancouver was underachieving.
All I know is last year they didn't have a right? Where were they before Talkett, right?
Yeah, Talkett came in for Boudreau, and they were good after they hired him.
Prior to that, they were a mess. People think that the Leafs are a mess right now.
But I think
even with your 100 points,
if you're going to make a comparison, the comparison for the Leafs would be that instead of Shanahan saying playoffs would be like, we're going to go to the cup, or we're going to go further in the playoffs. There'll be a different kind of parallel to draw here, as opposed to Rutherford saying we're going to make the playoffs. Shanny saying, I think we're good enough to go deep. Mm-hmm. I think it's a different sort of goalpost. They're different goalposts, no?
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair. But it is now a point where the Leafs feel like they're we talked quite a bit in the first hour about not even sure who would be making the decisions on some of these big decisions. Is it Tree? Is it Shanny? Is it, if you trade a core member, who has to sign off on that? Is it Keith Pelly? Who knows? So big decisions here.
I think we'll get a lot more clarity. At least, I don't know how clean they'll come with Brendan Shanahan's role moving forward. Is it exactly the same as before? Is he still the president and making decisions no different than before all of this before they got knocked out in the first round.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Can I ask you a question? And we've been talking about this a lot, and I think I know the answer to the question. Is there any chance like he just steps down tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Zero?
Okay, first of all,
I'm just wondering.
what does stepping down mean? Like, I'm stepping down, but I don't want my $6 million a year. Like, there's six. What I hear is as much as $6 million on the table.
Maybe he's going to go to Robida Island with Sheldon when they're.
He's paid as an executive. He's paid as a president of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay, so no chance.
So, but does he get stripped down a little bit of the decisions that he made in the past? Are they exactly the same?
Okay,
we'll find out.
All right, I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Does Pelly want to be more involved? Have some more opinion, more skin in the game?
I don't know if I want that either. Like, is Pelly like a hockey guy through and through? Like, I know he was running
a golf tour, DP World Tour.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Well,
I think he knows his stuff, but yes.
Brad Tree Living's there. He's supposed to make the decisions and then hopefully get the stamp of approval from people above him. All right, as promised, let's welcome in Craig Simpson, a very busy guy. Simmer, how's it going, man? You catch your breath from last night?
Yeah, it was good to get back into game mode, and obviously very different having two new teams, but couldn't have asked for a more exciting start and a great atmosphere, and just loving the fact that we're in the second round of the playoffs, and at least we have, two Canadian teams really well represented with their fans in the cities, and if game one is any indication, it should be an exciting series to watch.
Before we get into Vancouver's come-from-behind win over the Edmonton Oilers 5-4, you've covered the Toronto Maple Leafs more than anybody. Get your thoughts on Sheldon Keefe and his dismissal as head coach, and what maybe we can expect moving forward out of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I think I was listening to you guys before. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but no question, it's just another example of, another sacrificial coach. It's hard to believe. Is it 2 or 3 guys that haven't even got to their extension and got fired? I know at least he's the second, but
I
maybe
actually think it's 4 or 5. Yeah, it's a lot.
Is it more than that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what does that say to you about the league? Like, it is kind of mind-boggling, and it tells you a lot about the inability to make changes to your actual team. That is the group that's going to change the outcome for your, franchise. It's so much easier just to shuffle the deck and get rid of the coach. So, you know what? I'm not surprised by it, guys, from reading the tea leaves at the end of the season. In the end, it's all about the playoffs, as it always is. And, he got the one mark of winning the first round last year. But this year, as good as those last couple of games were and the way that the team responded and played was a positive. But I don't think maybe a second round exit, or for sure a third round exit, would probably have kept his job, but anything less, it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you going to move? Can I ask him one more coaching question?
Please.
Because, Simmer, whether you're a head coach or an associate coach, assistant coach like you were in Edmonton, can you speak of the experience going through it for the first time? And I know you didn't come back and keep going on a coaching career, and you stuck to the broadcasting. But a guy like Sheldon or anyone else that went through an experience like him for the first time, and what you can take out of it and learn and definitively say, if I could go back and do that over again, I definitely wouldn't do it that way. Did you feel that way too from your short stint behind the Edmonton Oilers bench?
No, I think what you have to do, and you probably feel a little bit better understanding of it, is just like we said, at the end of the day, you're hired to be fired, right? So you know that going in, that it's only a shelf life of gosh knows how long. And I think you have to be yourself, and you have to really adhere to the things you believe in and that you feel will get the best out of your players. And, I don't think you can try to be somebody to the outside of the media. I quite personally. I think Sheldon's a really nice person and has a good character, wants to portray things to the public and to the fans and sort of keep a balance there. I think you have to have a bit of a part of it saying some of this stuff is none of your business. Some of this stuff I'm not going to share with you. And some of this stuff has only my players and I need to know what we're talking about. And I know how difficult that is in a market like Toronto. For Craig McTavish, when I was in Edmonton, it's difficult there as well. But the players get the feeling that they know exactly who you are, what you represent, and how your relationship with them is the only thing that really matters. And you know what? I see that a little bit in talk coming back to his third or fourth team that he's been involved in. I think here in Vancouver, he's of the mindset of going, no, I just have to be who I need to be for my guys. And, I still have to talk and say the right things to the media. But I think probably if Sheldon goes, I'd worry less. There are times when I watch guys, press conferences and, coaches meetings in the morning and say, stop talking and get off. Like, just go. And I know you might get ticked off, but you know what? At the end of the day, you're going, sometimes there's things that I don't think your players really want to hear either. And you get extended out there and maybe say things that you probably don't need to or go longer. And I think you have to have that balance of be confident in who you are as a person and not worry if some of the people don't like it or criticize you. The only guys that matter about how they feel about you and how they respond to you are your players. And I think your players really get a feeling of that if you're true and honest and real to them. And sometimes it's peeling the onion back and, getting hard on them and being honest with them. I think at the end, the coaches that are able to walk that balancing act and are the ones that have success and maybe last a little bit longer. But most importantly, you got to get them the most out of your team. And I heard you saying about, what kind of balance is a motivator as opposed to an X's and O's. Listen, as Justin said, the X's and O's are not that different from team to team. They're very, very similar around the league. I always say you look at any Stanley Cup winning team, and you've had breakthrough performances from key players to role players to supplemental players to a goaltender, all that. And how do you get those peak performances? How do you get those breakthrough performances? Part of that is the coach's responsibility to build that and to gain that momentum as the season goes along, to challenge guys, to push them to become more than they are, to make them uncomfortable, to make them accountable. And I just think, Glenn Sather for me was that guy that just really knew how to lay that out in front of you and challenge you at the right time, but also empower you to be your best. And that's probably easier said than done. But if I'm a coach coming back like Sheldon will to another team, I think you can take pieces of that and improve on how you handle the situation with your players.
Hey, that comment about just stop talking, do you say that when you watch our show?
I was just out for a walk. Yeah, I was going, okay, that's enough.
That's enough, Sammy.
Well, I will give you a last one on the coaching thing before we turn the page. Is Craig Berube then the answer for the Leafs? Does someone who's a confident, hard-nosed guy like that, does that work here, or do you think it should be someone more like a McClellan or whoever else you think?
Yeah, that is the hard one, and that's the big question, isn't it, Justin? That you never know how one type of person in a certain market will handle a different market because there are differences. You can't be the same coach for the New York Rangers, Kyper, that you would be for maybe the Carolina Hurricanes. It is a different, or the Anaheim Ducks. So I do think, though, listening to you guys about who the people might be, I do think you have to have a different personality. And clearly, there has to be an element that the push has to be different. The accountability maybe has to be different. But you also do need a different type of voice that might get these guys to snap out of it and not, the key underlying fact is, as I mentioned before, the breakthrough performances haven't happened when it matters the most. So what is that? I doubt that's X's and O's. I think part of that is pushing, and part of that is inspiring, and part of that is bonding your group together to get to a different level. And maybe, he's done that, obviously, in that tumultuous time in St. Louis, and maybe that was the perfect formula for him because of the kind of guy he was. I played with him for a little bit, and interesting guy. love him as a person, and he is some that will inspire guys to do things differently. And I would imagine, though, you have to have a different type of voice than the one you had for the last 3 years.
We're talking to Craig Simpson, Stanley Cup champion, Hockey Night in Canada analyst. So last night, the Vancouver Canucks overcame a 3-goal deficit to beat the Edmonton Oilers. And Simmer, how pissed did Connor McDavid wake up this morning going, how did we let that get away from us?
Yeah, you know what? You know that as much as you say, it's a long series and all that, I go back to my experience coaching the Stanley Cup final with Mac. We lost game 1. We had a 3-0 lead in game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, 3-0 lead, and then our goalie gets hurt. But we blew a 3-0 lead that ultimately, guys, lost us the Stanley Cup. I know we lost in game 7, but that's a game we should never have lost. Mm-hmm. In game 6, we played our best game of the series, which should have been the cup being presented to us there. So it's not lost on anybody, and especially within that Oiler organization, just how big a loss that is. When you work to the level to get the 3-0 lead, you can't let it slip away. So I would expect that 97 would have been a little irritated this morning waking up. And I thought as a team, and Chris Knobloch said it after, we didn't push hard enough when we had that position. I think part of the, Leon going down in that second and being gone for a while kind of stalled the way that the line went. Maybe they could have made it, 5-1, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins misses a wide open net with the goalie not looking. That should have been 5-1. And those are the little things that you got to sort of flush out of your memory banks, but make sure that the next time you're in a tight situation, you can't let that happen again. But you know what? Give Canucks full measure. They are the type of team right now that is growing and growing and growing as the playoffs come, because the new experiences are piling on each other, and they're gaining strength with those experiences. And when you find a way to overcome a couple of goal deficit and win, next time around, you're well prepared to maybe deal with that situation differently and not be in that 3-down situation. So you create an enemy that all of a sudden is growing in confidence, which I know the Oilers are going to want to try to rectify game 2.
Simmer, did anything about that first game change your mind about what this series is going to look like and how it's going to play out?
Not so much changed my mind about it. Always going into a series, you need to get the first game to get a feel for what's the style going to be, or what's the matchup going to be. I do think that what it did show was the improvement. And we knew coming in, although you gave up 4 goals and 5 goals, so you can't really talk about tight defensive games. But both these teams, and I think the biggest improvement for Vancouver is to stick with the way that they have to play to be successful, even when things aren't going well. And that's a hard for a young team that's a little inexperienced. You get down and all of a sudden you open up and you give a team like Edmonton or Connor McDavid, 5-6 grade A scoring chances because you're pressing so hard to score. Instead, even though you're down 4-1, you hold McDavid to 0 shots on goal for the first time in the playoffs. That says a lot about the growth. So I kind of expected that type of a game a little bit from Vancouver, having watched them in the first and listened to Rick talk about them. But I think it did play out. The concern for me for Edmonton or any team actually always is, when you've got the star guys, if you don't get the big production of the big goals out of them, who else is going to come to the forefront? And, last game was, again, really nothing from the bottom 6, a couple of mistakes that end up in your net, and a goaltender performance that wasn't good enough. And so can you rectify that? I think no question, Justin, you can. But that's something that, when it creeps into Edmonton's game, that's really where they can falter, and I think you'll see a better and a more organized team in game 2.
Simmer, it wasn't a stellar night for either goaltender. I think Kelly Rudy mentioned last night on air that he thought maybe make a goaltender change in between periods.
I wasn't into that at all.
Yeah.
And I look at the fact that I said the kid came in an unreal situation, the third string goaltender. He's got a little bit of history of coming up big and not being overwhelmed. He wins that first game when they're down by 2 and they score two goals with the goaltender out and then win in overtime. You get a 1-0 shutout to get you into the second round. I didn't think there was any way that Rick Tocchet was going to pull them there. And I think, again, he showed, and that's where you talk about a team getting dangerous that starts to believe not only in their guy who's an unsuspecting hero in there, but they believe in each other and they bail each other out. And so I don't often disagree with Kelly, but that was one for sure that I thought there's no way. And even Chris Cuthbert said to me after, he go, "Oh, what do you think is going to be the starter in game 2?" And I go, I can't imagine that you would not start anybody than the guy that's won you 2 of the biggest games, in your playoff run. So I think it's his until you lose and falter, and then maybe make that distinction of do you go back to DeSmith. And obviously if Demko comes back and is healthy, he's your guy.
Zimmer, according to the nerd numbers last night, when Nurse and Ceci were on the ice, scoring chances were 12-1 for the Canucks. Do you have some concern that second pair for the Oilers isn't gonna be enough?
Well, I just think that's again where when the Oilers are faltering a bit, it is where it's their defensive play and it's their inability to stop a cycle, or they give up the line a little bit too easily, or they get scoring chances created against them. You know what? In a short sample size, you got a game that probably those metrics, which are important, and they're when you match them with the eye test, you go, yeah, was I seeing that of the group? And I'd say, yeah. Like there's times where you're not making the clean out, you're not making the clean pass, you're missing an assignment, you're a little late getting there, and those are the things that would concern you. I also think, though, if your goaltender is Stuart Skinner that played most of that first round and played well, you're not probably having the conversation. So it is a balancing act, Justin, but it's definitely one that I think when you look at the back end, there's no question in my mind that Vancouver's 6 defensemen outplayed Edmonton's 6 defensemen in game 1.
Simmer, we saw Connor Garland break the tie on a fake slap shot at maybe one of the sharpest angles. I'm still wondering how it went in, and then hearing the guys in the studio talking about Sittler against Zarella, and everybody's going, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
But listen, it wasn't a good night for Skinner here. How important is game 2 for him before people start questioning whether or not it was left in the net with the right guy?
Yeah, no, it's really important. And, listen, bounce back is what every playoff series takes a life of its own. You're a favorite coming in or you're an underdog. Doesn't really matter. But I think everybody coming in is going, hey, I think Edmonton's a better team. They should win this series. So all of a sudden it's a 4-1 lead and you got a couple of bad goals. There's no question that not only for the sake of Stuart Skinner's mentality, but every player on that bench, it's not that long ago. Round 2 last year against the Vegas Golden Knights, a 6-4 loss in game 1. Stuart Skinner got pulled in 3 of the next 4 games. And that is something that guys don't talk about it or necessarily think about it, but it's there. And so you got to look at the guy back there and say, if he comes back and is Stuart Skinner, who had a heck of a game in LA with a 1-0 win, that's where your team goes, yeah, we're fine. But it's about passing those tests and jumping over those hurdles as the series goes along. So there's no question it goes right back into his crease and says he needs a game to settle every one of his teammates down to go, I'm fine, we're going to bounce back and everything's going to be okay.
Get a good rest, my friend, because
right,
there's a real sense.
You know what? You got two Canadian teams in the second round, and you brought me back to talking about the Leafs, too.
Oh, it'll be over soon, Simmer. All right.
Enjoy tomorrow.
You as well, my friend. Game 2, Rogers Arena, Friday night. Can't wait.
Thanks, Simmer.
Oh,
There you go.
he's so right about Sheldon, about talking.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to talk for 10 minutes twice a day.
It was the best for us.
Yes.
It was the
Yes.
best for us.
On our show, you do.
So, Craig Berube, if you're listening, 10 minutes twice a day, every day for us, please.
We'll pick through that. No, it is. It's a lot to give for people to pick through, and you're not going to say the right things all the time. That's just the way it goes.
Listening to Craig talk about his past experiences and
God, they were up
blowing a game like that for the Edmonton Oilers, and whether or not that could haunt them in this series. Game 1.
You know what is more concerning is that it happens and Draisaitl gets one of those mystery back, he's not quite right things. And I know he had 2 assists and he was awesome and he's Leon Draisaitl and he'll probably be fine. But if you're the Canucks, you're like, okay, we found a way to get a win and that guy's not 100% now.
I'm not sure.
Good
Like,
start.
I'm not as convinced as you. He'll be fine.
No.
That stuff. It's 48 hours, and if he's feeling it in game 1, 48 hours, there's going to be some lingering effect, I think, still there.
He's a postseason freak too. His point per game, it's like Gretzky, Lemieux, Draisaitl.
Yeah. What did they trade to get Zadorov, the Canucks?
2 seconds, maybe.
Was it that much?
Maybe less. 2 second and a fourth, maybe.
Yeah, he has been awesome for them. He is such a presence. He was traded for a 3 and a 5.
Oh, even that's like put the money in the bag and don't try any funny stuff.
How did they get him for that? They wanted him out of Calgary, eh? It must have been that. Like, to get him for that he's been awesome.
Yeah, he is. He's putting himself in a very good place moving forward for his next contract. All right, we're doing game time?
Well, I got a few clips. Do you want to just move off of that?
Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll come back with some clips.
Okay. It's game time, presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. So a couple games on the ice tonight. The Rangers heading to Carolina. Bet365 is pretty convinced that the Carolina Hurricanes are going to get one on the board here. Carolina is a minus 165 favorite on their home ice. If you are a gambler who's looking for some value, the New York Rangers, who have won 6 straight playoff games and look to be like a bit of a juggernaut at this moment, they are plus 140. It's a great number and one that I would be having a look at. I think, Bourne, the way you're looking at me, like you like the Carolina Hurricanes tonight.
I do like them, but I also think plus 140 on a team that's got Shesterkin and has won 6 straight, not the worst you could do.
And we'll talk a little bit about this in news and notes, but Freddie not playing tonight on the bench. They're going to
Kochetkov?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Kochetkov.
Yeah, they're going to Kochetkov. So maybe a little bit of a boost for them. They get back in the series.
Nothing.
But I mean, didn't I say, like, what are the chances we see another goal in this series before it even started? And the chances were...
All I know is my Freddie Anderson for Norris pick is...
for Norris?
Sorry, not Norris. For
Conn Smythe?
whatever it is. Conn Smythe.
So
doing
the Rangers have won the first 6?
Yeah.
I think in 94 we won
No,
the
you did.
first 6.
100%.
We did?
That's accurate. Yeah.
What happened in Game 7? Someone find out and bet it.
I think we swept the Islanders
That was
and
a
then
flat
we
circle.
beat Wash in 5 in the second round.
Okay.
Like, it's crazy.
And then the Devils...
Was
their-
Washington good?
No.
Oh, that's too bad. Carolina's pretty good.
Yeah,
This
no.
guy's No.
They were kind of like the way they were the Washington Capitals this year.
Just
Or your
lambs to
Islanders.
the slaughter, yeah.
One
yeah.
or two.
Fair.
So, and then the other game tonight, of course, is the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars. Ooh. And yeah, it's just 2 excellent hockey games tonight. Dallas Stars are minus 135 on home ice. Bet365 expecting them to get back in the win column. Colorado Avalanche plus 115. Can't tell. Like, those are, I mean, what does a parlay of the New York Rangers and
the Avs?
and the Avs pay here? If you want to pay the
290?
hold on, the 2 underdogs, as I do this on air, the 2 underdogs tonight are paying plus 416.
Oh,
So,
my God.
a Rangers Colorado
Add it
parlay
down
you could do a hell of a lot worse than plus 416.
Yes.
Got something for me?
Go ahead. Finish it off.
All right. That was Game Time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
In your Kippers Corner today in your article, you mentioned that the first round of playoffs wasn't, it's usually fireworks. Yes. And there was only a handful of overtimes. It just didn't feel quite as whatever. This second round is already so much better.
Yes.
I mean, Boston and Florida is an absolute melee. It was last night anyway.
How do you go back-to-back blowouts?
I know, but there's still tension and the series feels close even with that.
Let's take a break and talk about that game.
Okay.
We lots of clips,
including pasta. And Kachuk.
El Dante pasta.
Who had that on your fight card?
Not me.
No. Not you. All right, plus Kachuk. We got Kippers Clippers out of head coaches last night in Vancouver and Edmonton. We'll get their thoughts on Zadorov from Talkit, Stuart Skinner from Knobloch. So plenty more when we return to Real Kipper and Bourne. The Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Sammy McKee. How big's game 2 for Skinner for you? So Craig mentioned also McDavid, no shots on goal. So, I mean,
and that's
there's different ways to kind of look at this, but goaltending has got to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, Myers paired did a really good job on McDavid. So I just got to say, the goal that Garland scores on Skinner. God. So I love that play. I love the Jason Spezza kind of coming down, fake clap, get the goalie to slide, open him up. Can't go in.
That was a 1981 goal.
The
fake
go
clapper
in.
On the ice.
I love the play. I truly love that. But
the angle was so bad, I think it was going wide.
Oh, it wasn't going in.
It wasn't going in.
Hit his pad and went in.
Hit his pad and went in.
Yeah.
It's like, oof.
I know you're on the bench. You're just going, God, come on.
Yeah,
we're doing our best out here.
All right, let's go to a Kippers Clipper with Coach Knobloch on Stuart Skinner. Clip 2.
Stu has won so many games. He's played so spectacular through the years, and there's going to be games where they're not his A game, and he'll be the first to admit tonight wasn't his A game, but we'd never doubt him with how he plays and how more importantly, how he responds after a game that it wasn't his best. Stu's played very well for us throughout this time, and he'll play really well for us in the games going forward. So,
yeah, you don't bail on him publicly.
No, I noticed you just said publicly.
Well, I mean, there's some conversations happening, boys.
He's talking to us, so he's speaking publicly.
Yes,
but you don't expect anything less.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying behind the scenes he's ripping them. I'm just saying when you speak of him to people like us and the fans, that's your guy.
Yeah. I read some Skinner quotes from the game where he was like, we can't stop playing when we were ahead. And how it is, we scrutinize quotes that people, so whatever. But I was just like, don't say anything about the team.
Yeah.
Just,
keep it out.
Yeah. Keep it out of the net. That's all you're asked to do. So tough spot. He does have to sort of build that confidence back up. We know that when he plays well, he can be an excellent goaltender.
5 straight L's to the Canucks for the Edmonton Oilers.
Baffling.
On that, let's go to Coach Knobloch on that.
0-5 this year against this team for some reason. It seems like every game has been lost sort of a different way. Is there something there?
Well, I wasn't here for the first 3, so I can't comment on those. Obviously, I've seen them on video, and we just got to find a way to get that finishes the job. And I thought, for the most part, you have that 4-1 lead. We're in a good enough position that should be enough to win a hockey game, and we let it get away from us.
Did he just tell Speck, I'm 0 for 2?
I didn't expect him to use this shaggy, it wasn't me defense.
I don't know what you're talking about, Speck.
Well, I wasn't here for the first 3, so
I'm surprised he said that. That to me, I mean, we had Knobloch on the show. I wouldn't exactly call him the most electrifying personality. That's fair.
We've ever had in the show.
Yeah,
that is so close to. Hey, I had my man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys gave one up. So that's my guy.
Hey, I don't know
Only
what
me.
happened over here,
Hey.
Coach, but I had my man.
We lost. I scored 2, boys.
Yeah,
I scored
what do you
2.
want? But in all seriousness, like I was among the camp that when they went up 4-1, it was like, okay, the Hyman's second goal that goes under Shilov's pad was like, okay,
That was
I've
bad.
seen enough. You know what my thought was? You can't give them freebies. That was my whole thought. Was like, this is the Oilers. They're gonna get theirs. You can't give them freebies. Night.
Yeah.
And not night. That's a real testament to the Canucks' willingness to stay in it and fight. And
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to Rick Tocchet talk about how confident he was being down 4-1.
Yeah, no, we talked about it. I said to him after it was 4-1. I said, it's not like don't get frustrated. It's not that bad. We don't have to push all our chips in. Thought we were pretty good. So I think that's the key. There wasn't a lot of guys hanging their heads. Coaches weren't yelling and screaming. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought we were pretty good. So I think that's the key.
I actually agree. Like for long stretches of that game, the Canucks were dominating them. They spent a ton of time in the Oilers' defensive.
Well, it didn't
offensive
start
zone.
that way with too many men on the
know.
ice.
what
Like,
a beginning. It was like, you
that's as
can't take a
bad as it
penalty. You
gets.
can't. And it was just like, and the shorthanded, and Hyman scored, and this is over. Like, I mean, the texts that were going around at that point, they were like,
yeah.
this is going to be a bloodbath.
Can I be totally honest? I was watching the basketball game and I hadn't flipped over yet. And I flipped over. I'm like, they're already on the power.
I know.
How did this happen?
I know. And if you're on the bench for Vancouver, you're like, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Outside of like your best players being hurt, you can't do worse than that. So I can't believe they hung in there. But the nerd numbers really like the Canucks' performance in that game in terms of expected goals and all that other stuff. They were the team. Part of that is because it's score effects, right? You're losing, the other team's playing the prevent defense, but
Hey, how about that Dakota Joshua? I found out today, I completely forgot that another big guy that Dubas got rid of.
No, we had this conversation. Yeah.
Did we?
Oh, yeah, we did.
We talk a lot. I
I
can't
know.
remember
do
that.
that.
No,
lot
we
of words.
did. And maybe one of the few times I've gone to Kyle Dubas's defense
Yeah, okay.
saying no one saw this guy coming.
Well, Vancouver did.
No.
I mean, they signed him. And,
Yeah, when?
I don't know.
When?
They
When he was
signed
like
him.
7 years later.
yeah.
I just don't know how.
Okay?
I don't
You
know
don't
how.
see it. Early, no one saw this coming from him.
He's a beast.
Well, he also worked his ass off on every part of his game.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's in a position to really make some good money this summer and still be a very important part before then for the Vancouver Canucks. But you couldn't read the tea leaves on this guy coming
Okay.
out of college.
Okay.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, the play he makes off the off the end boards. He needs an open net, but he has to short arm it upstairs.
He
Great
wasn't
goal.
making that play 3 or 4 years ago. I
All right.
assure you.
All right.
Can I do a Leafs quickly?
Yeah.
Watching that goal, I was like, where are those bounces? How do a million pucks just find sticks
Yeah,
around
like-
the net? I don't mean for the Leafs,
No.
even in those series, like Boston didn't get them, like just such
Nothing.
low scoring games. So this one just felt like everything you shot could go in. Expected goals with McDavid on the ice, the Oilers got 33% of them. So they were out expected goals.
I mean, that matters.
Yeah. The play was in his end.
Zadorov didn't need a bounce.
No, he just hammered it through,
Hammered.
through the net,
But what are
basically.
the guys like? I know you're in your defensive zone, but there was 3 Oilers not covering anyone, just standing in a line in their goalie's eyes. Like Perry was there. I forget who else was there. It's like, get out of the way. Let them see it.
All right, let's go to Rick Tocchet on Zadorov.
Yeah, I think Z, how I feel about him. It's just his, as much obviously on the ice, he's just had a hell of a playoffs for us, but his locker room, you guys don't see the stuff that he does. He's a leader, but he's also a funny guy. Like, he keeps guys loose. Like, even on the bench with me, like, he says some stuff and the pressure's on, and somehow he says something. I chuckle. It's like 4 minutes, it's a high game and something. He said something. I can't remember what he said. I was laughing. But he's obviously a huge acquisition for us on and off the ice.
How many chuckles down 3?
Less chuckles. If you chuckle at that point, they send you to the dressing room. I have experience with that.
I'm so ready for Creed overpay for Zadorov this offseason.
Oh, God.
And I'm just going to hate it. But right now, this version of Zadorov, I'm like, just be on the Leafs.
Yeah.
Love him.
He has a couple moments.
He scored.
Go the other way.
He's had some big years, I think, didn't he?
He scored 14 one year.
14?
Yeah.
That's a good number.
That's a lot of goals. He can hit it.
got 5 points in 7 playoff games, including 3 goals for them. And that one against Nashville where he shot it under the bar against Saros. It's like he's a player.
Yeah.
Hammers. He'd be a popular guy here until his first turnover.
So the Canucks land the first blow. Speaking of blows, do you want to talk about Florida Boston now?
Yes.
It's been long enough.
Yep.
I mean, that game was fascinating. You got Brandon Montour doing the licking motion at Brad Marchand. You had weird semi-fights happening all over the ice. This game got really confrontational once they pulled Swayman. By the way, they pulled Jeremy Swayman, who had a .955 save percentage going into that game in the postseason this year. And then just all hell broke loose where the Bruins clearly made the decision that we're just going to set the tone for next game.
Yep, which I love.
They stopped playing hockey. Montgomery went over to Swayman and had said, "Hey, I still love you. Let's hug later. We're best friends." And the goalie went, "Okay." And then he went to the bench and said, "I hate you all. Go do something."
Yeah.
And they decided to fight everyone. That was not verbatim, but
it's crazy though, the swing in that game, because the end of the second period, Swayman makes 2 or 3 unbelievable saves to keep it at 2-1 with maybe 30 seconds left. And you're like, oh, okay, we're going here. And then they score with 0.3 to make it 3-1.
Yeah.
It felt like that just completely broke the Bruins. Like, that is such a huge moment. And then a brouhaha, just a hoot nanny.
good old fashioned
Donnybrook.
My favorite part of that game was watching Keith Kachuk's wife, I think, Chantel.
Yeah.
Look at the big guy going, okay, settle down.
Old Keith was wired. He was fired up. He was let me at him.
Pie hole. Shut.
He legit was like leaving, and she was like,
Yeah, get back here.
The wires were crossing into luxury.
And all you can hear is, yes, dear.
100%.
We got to get Walt on the show.
They've had that conversation before, and he was like, I better see
yeah.
Do you think he's allowed to come on the radio now? Remember the last couple of times I texted him, he said he wouldn't do it.
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm going to text him.
So pasta fight.
Yeah. Give us your thoughts, Sammy, because on pasta.
Well,
because you're pasta.
I hate him.
Yeah, you hate pasta.
That makes no sense.
You hate all carbs.
It doesn't make sense.
No, he is a flashy, dynamic
Do you
talent
know who I am?
scores and
The
hits
reason I'm here is because I'm a diehard Leaf fan, and he owns them. He kills them. He scored a series-winning Game 7 overtime goal against the Leafs. I hate his guts.
Gotta respect that.
But I'm of two minds on this. I think it's great that he fought, and we're going to listen to some clips where everybody kind of says the same thing. But he's a guy that likes to act tough. And we found out definitively he is not tough. So I think it was
He's not used. He tried to line up switch.
Little from column A, little from column B.
Somebody's got to work with him. Like, hey, Cam.
Yeah.
He went
I know
full
we're
Semin
old,
on
Cam,
him.
but get down there on ice level and
trying
help
He
him
went
a
full
little
Alex
bit.
Semin there.
He was
That was
trying some
ugly for
things.
him. Ugly.
But I tell you, as someone who didn't fight a ton, I remember having a moment where going, to the coach, being like, asking, can I fight this guy? And kind of hoping he said no. Like if you're pasta and you're like, hey, can I fight this guy? You saw Monty's face light up. He's like, you want to go home? Yeah.
He was so excited.
Monty loved it. He was like, okay.
So
when you say not a ton, is that like never?
Yeah, just once a year, so no one made fun of me. Yeah, no, but it was like I vaguely remember that, and you could see Monty be like, "Go ahead." And Pasta's like, "Okay."
So, do you want to start with the Bruins' perspective
Yes.
on this?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get the Jim Montgomery clip on Pasta versus Tkachuk.
They're two teams that are rivals, with, we played each other last year, playing each other this year, and it's going to be a series. And what I'm really proud of, I'm proud of Pasta. Because there's so many guys out there pushing after a whistle when the linesmen are there. Pasta and Tkachuk, they just went out there and fought. That's what you like. You like your hockey players to be competitors.
I love that. So many the old
It's a
guys.
gamble. I
the
get
old
it.
Guys.
I get it. It's a gamble. Like if that guy gets hurt, it may fall on Jim Montgomery. You didn't control him.
For sure.
You didn't tell him to stop it. But
He literally asked you if you could, and you said yes.
You gave the green light, and you got concussed or whatever.
that's the chance that you take.
Do you want to hear Pasternak himself talk about the fight?
Sure.
Okay. Let's hear it.
You are in the game. It's a lot of emotions, and I'm not afraid of him. To be honest, I can take a punch, and I do anything for these guys here.
I love that.
If you're a Boston Bruins fan, you're
running
you're
through a
beating
wall.
your
Come on.
chest. Your best player. I mean, Willie's not doing that. Sorry, boys.
Everybody's listen. There's 2 or 3 guys on every team in the league where any fan base can go, I wish that guy said that, or
Yeah.
it's either in you or it's not.
Yeah, well, I was going to say a lot of the older generation watching these games now sees these scrums where you see two guys like Brezzo and whoever it was doing a West Coast swing dance move. And, there's a couple of moments where guys are doing the gloves. And you're like, do you want to fight or do you don't want to fight?
Yeah.
Pick one. So, I guess go ahead and have it out now. That's done.
We got to hear Paul Maurice's thoughts because they are excellent. So let's hear Paul Maurice.
They each have their team, right? They got their brothers in the room. It gets a little spicy out there, and they want to go. I think it was awesome. I think when it was over, they both looked like they were fine.
And let's move on.
Sorry, whoever's offended by that concept, I don't care. I thought it was awesome.
There you go.
I thought it was awesome too. And I think, I think you talk about these big playoff moments, and what do you think about when you remember like Cavalier and Iginla fighting in the fight? Like
remember Thornton and Getzlaff
when two stars are like, I hate you enough to risk the good parts of my game just to beat the crap out of you. That's what you love about playoff hockey, that they care that much.
They're invested in the series.
Yes.
It's
Yep. Well, Matthews fought Stamkos last year, boys. Remember that?
Yeah.
But I mean that's not too dissimilar. That there's the idea that it's like, all right.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple of minutes here, and I don't usually really care about this stuff, but Utah's
oh my God,
list.
you're not breaking this off.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You have the list in front of you?
I do.
I didn't even put it on the lineup or even talk about it because I can't believe.
Good news. I've been through it.
Utah Powder.
That's actually the worst name I've ever seen.
I mean,
can
it's
you imagine
horrible.
being a professional hockey team named the Powder?
Where do you
Is
get
there
your
a
nickname?
softer title that's sponsored by Talcom?
And that can go a couple ways with some of the habits.
We came up with that nickname after 2 a.m. Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Okay.
The Powder is awful.
Utah Ice.
Also the worst. Actually, call yourself the Powder before you call yourself the Ice.
Were they Kootenai Ice?
Was this?
That's a junior.
Was this a survey with grade 2 kids?
Yeah.
Utah Ice. Get it? Hockey Ice.
They're on
good
it.
one, kids.
And there's some in Utah.
No good.
No good.
Utah Blast.
Didn't get that one. Doesn't make sense to me.
Utah HC.
That's hockey club.
Oh, thanks, Tips. Utah Frost.
Also
These
don't
are
like it.
Exclusively,
Utah Freeze.
These are exclusively horrible. You haven't got a good one yet.
Utah Hive.
That's for the Beehives.
No, but there's also the Swarm as one of the suggestions.
Remember the Beehive?
There's
the Beehive State.
It's giving me a bad rash.
I don't mind.
Name.
I don't mind the Hive.
You like having the Hives?
Go Hive, go.
Hive.
Yeah, it kind of stinks.
No.
You call the rink
There's
the Beehive?
there's one in there.
Mountain Ears.
You know what I like? I like the Mammoth.
I actually love Utah Mountaineers. Mountaineers is the classic sort of sports team name that works.
Mountaineers from the 1910s.
Outlaws.
You don't like Mammoth?
I like Mammoth.
Mammoth's okay.
I like Mammoth. I don't mind Outlaws either.
I don't mind Outlaws.
Okay, so they're going to go the whole year without a name.
Yeah, they're gonna, it's just going to say Utah on their jersey.
You're right. Why could you not unveil it at Christmas?
Why do you need the whole year?
It is one of the most baffling decisions. I agree.
So you're going to go the whole year because you don't want to screw it up. Do you know you can easily screw it up in a year from now than you can in 3 months?
Yeah, you're right.
Judging by those names, it's screwed up. They already screwed it up.
You know what? You know what's a good one? Do you like the Squall? That was one of the ones.
Mountaineers or nothing.
I just don't understand. Hire a company, pay them to come up with a good name. That's their job.
I think his company, Qualtrics, is like a survey company. This is like part of what they do.
You know why they won't do it? Because they're scared. They're scared they're going to make a bad name.
What should it be called?
Kraken? You're following the Kraken. You're going to be okay.
You can't make a decision on your name. How are you going to do a trade deadline, Utah?
Okay. I can't believe you brought that up. I love that you did.
Good job.
I was just running out of things. And I'm tired because I played 18 and I walked.
Yeah.
Time for the couch. And can I have a push cart with a brake that works? I lost my bag. I lost my watch. I lost everything. It almost went in the river.
Shout out Scarborough.
Thanks, everybody. We're back tomorrow.